It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! This week, starring me, talking about improving your music's odds of success. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday and a brand new week. It's going to be a good show today. Lots of good information. 1,800 words of stuff for me to talk about. I'm going to have to talk really fast to get through this. Okay, so there's the chat room. Hello, everybody. Hello, Amanda, Gloria, Pedro, Mary Band, Bob, Rob, William Andrew. All right, so you know what? Before I start the show, we are going to talk about improving your music's odds of success. I'm excited to talk about this stuff. Before we do, I want to tell you guys about a lunch that I had the other day with the owner of what I would call an A-list production music library. This person's very smart. I like him a lot. They get a lot of great placements. And you know how I'm always whining about members not telling us about deals they're getting. And of course, the companies don't really take the time to tell us about the deals they get for our members after we get our members placed in those libraries, because they'd rather spend their time pitching and making money than answering a bunch of emails or phone calls. Anyway, at lunch the other day, this gentleman showed up and he said, I remember, that you want me to keep you in the loop. So here's a little list of taxi members that we've gotten in stuff just recently, and this is kind of off the top of my head. It's not a very complete list, but it's something. I said, okay, great, thanks. And he handed it to me, and so here we go. The hit TV show American Crime has a song called A Night on the Town by Paul Otten, whose name you guys know. There's a film called Bad Hurt. Mark, I can never pronounce Mark's last name correctly, so forgive me, Mark, if you're watching today or if you watch the archived version and I butcher your last name, but I believe it's Mark Soljicic. I kind of remember it's Mark Soljicic, but in any case, Mark has his song, Who's Been Loving You, in the film Bad Hurt. Here's Paul Otten again and Michelle Lockie. They're known as Tin Feathers when they work together, and they got their song You and My Happy Heart in the USA Network show Benched. There's another show called #Biker Live, and Michelle Lockie and Paul Coughlin, another longtime taxi member, got their song Relapse City in the show. Josh Coleman, who I've known forever. Josh was an early taxi member, and I remember meeting him in San Francisco probably like 20 years ago. Great guy. His song, It Don't Make Me a Better Man, Get Into the Conversation, was also in #Biker Live. Josh Coleman and Michelle Lockie worked together on a song called Lion's Den that also made it into #Biker Live. Ethan Nakamura and Paul Otten got their song You'd Better Run in #Biker Live. Greg Mandel and Dean Taylor got their song Could He Be the Devil in #Biker Live. Paul Coughlin got his song Slow Moving Man in #Biker Live, and then it says plus many more. So if I remember correctly, the owner of the library said that show is basically wallpapered with his writers, many of whom, if not most of whom, that got their stuff in the show came through Taxi. So we're very proud of all those members. The new show Bosch, Matt Hurt got his instrumental called Lantern Day in that show. Paul Otten got his piece called My Rope in Bosch. Complications, which is on the USA Network, has the song Chains on My Neck by Owen Chaim. And I'm never sure if, the Hebrew pronunciation of Owen's name would be Chaim. But I believe he pronounces it Chaim. Owen Chaim, Chains on My Neck. Not Chains on My Neck, Chains on My Neck, got into Complications. Jane the Virgin, which is a brand new hit show, used Paul Otten's song Said and Done. Madam Secretary, another new hit show, which I've actually seen a couple of episodes of, used a song called Keki Dila, Kiedela, and that's done by Matt Hurt. Paul Otten had Better Than You Thought, also in Madam Secretary. A documentary called The Mother Grain used a song by Steve Rice, or an instrumental by Steve Rice called Churro Churro. Night Shift, another hit show, used a song by Paul Coughlin called I'm the Man. Nurse Jackie, which has been a hit for a very long time. Where we go? Used a song by Mark Soljicic, Paul Coughlin, and Paul Otten called She's Got the Devil in Her Eyes. That's on Nurse Jackie, which is, what, HBO or Showtime, I believe. Sons of Anarchy. We've had several things show up in Sons of Anarchy. Some of them through libraries, some of them were direct placements through us. Used Steve Rice's instrumental called Mazel Mazel Tov. And Walmart had an online ad campaign called Blueprint to Quit, and Brent Magstadt got his instrumental We Smile in that. And Whole Foods did an online ad campaign called Dark Rye, and they used Graham McRae's song, the instrumental of Graham McRae's song, The End. I know that song. It's a great song. So congratulations to all you. And my point is that, my gosh, this is just one library. I mean, in any given, like month, I would say we've got listings for a dozen, 2 dozen libraries. We're probably active with 50 or more libraries during the course of a year. And gee, just imagine if all those members or all those libraries were giving us, and like I said, the guy who handed me this list apologized that he said, this is just recent stuff that's off the top of my head. So just imagine how much Taxi member music is out there every day, all over the world, because you guys are submitting great stuff that's getting forwarded by Taxi, and you are making the grade and matching what they need. Everybody's happy. So yay, I'm happy. And you guys should be proud. Congratulations. Yay. All right. So, I see it's a happy birthday to Andy. Yay. Which Andy? All right. So, improving your music's odds of success. And as I said in my letter earlier today, there are tons of musicians who think that the music industry is a game of chance, kind of a lottery of sorts. And it's my impression that people think, gee, if only the right person would hear my music and discover the genius that I am, then the floodgates will open up and I'll get to live my dream of being a successful musician. And I don't think that the music industry is as much a game of chance as people think it is. I think that luck is not the main reason that some people are successful and others are not. I think that there are many things that you can do to improve your chances of success, improve your odds, and that they're all within your control, or many of them, not all of them. I shouldn't ever speak in absolutes. But I've probably touched on some of these things in previous shows, but I don't think that they can be repeated often enough. So let's get right down to it, and we'll listen to today's featured song in a little bit. Okay, so item number 1 on my list is submit the best and most on-target vocal that you can. If you're pitching to an artist, let's say that you're submitting to a listing where a record label is looking for music for an artist. You want to have that artist cover your song, match the gender of the person that you're pitching to. The gender. That means, are they male or female or neutered? Although some people will tell us, and we'll say that in the listing, that it's okay to pitch a song with a male vocal for a female artist if the lyric could be changed, or if the lyric is applicable as it stands for the other gender. Go ahead and submit that. Sure, they're saying it's okay, why not? But I believe that if you match the topic or the lyric theme or perspective of the artist that you're pitching to, you stand a much better chance. So here are a couple examples. Would Faith Hill cut a song about a cheating husband? No. It doesn't relate to her life. She wouldn't want anybody out there thinking that Tim McGraw is cheating on her, so she's not going to cut that kind of song. Would she cut a song that's about a cheating wife when she's a woman? No. So, you know, don't submit a song that's about an inappropriate topic or inappropriate for the gender, because it would kind of be wasting your bullet there. Would Keith Urban sing a song about getting all dolled up for a night out on the town with the girls? No, not unless there's something about Keith Urban that we don't know. Would Jay-Z rap about growing up in a small Midwestern town? You know, like a country song might? Doubtful. Although I don't know where Jay-Z grew up, so maybe he would. Just saying. So do your homework and find out what those people typically sing about and try and match the gender. You want to create the least amount of work for the person on the receiving end is possible. So make it easy for them by matching the gender. And I see that Bubbles asked for children's songs, male or female singer. It depends. You know, honestly, I'm not a world-class expert in the children's market, but they may specify, if they're asking for a female vocal, give them female. If they're asking for male, give them male. If they're not asking for either gender, then it's wide open. Just a shoot from the hip guess on my part, I would say that children's songs, probably the ladies probably beat the gents as far as the percentage of songs that are sung by women, only because I think moms probably spend more time playing children's music for the kids. I could be really wrong about that. Like I said, it's just my opinion, my guess, just a guess. Oh, I'm thirsty. My mouth is dry. Gee, it must be time to drink some Rockstar. This is called Punched, and it is my favorite flavor. Tastes like a Hawaiian punch, but fizzy and with caffeine in it. Okay, item number 2, or thing number 2 on my list, is match the most often used key of the person you're pitching to. Now, this one's going to take a little bit of work, but not a lot. Listen to the reference artists in the taxi listing and see if you can find a key that they most often work in. If your demo is in the same key, then they're going to be able to sing along with it when they hear it, making it easier for them to imagine themselves performing it. The minute they open their mouth, if by the middle of the first chorus they're singing along, or certainly by the second chorus, the artist who you want to have cut your song, if it's made it through their A&R person to them, if it's made it through their producer to them, if it's made it through their manager to them, why not put it in a key that makes it easy for them to sing? Now, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a good example. Christina Aguilera. She's really rangy. That girl can hit notes that'll probably break glasses. So I would listen to 2 or 3 of her biggest hits if she's one of the reference artists and see, are they in a similar key? Are they in the same key? You get to know what the top of her range is, what the bottom of her range is. So why not give her something that's going to be right in the pocket for her range? So again, if she likes what she's hearing and she wants to start singing along as she's listening to the demo, the minute she opens her mouth, it starts to ingrain that song in her brain, and you stand a much better chance of getting that artist to love that song and ultimately cut it. That's my opinion, but I think I'm right. Let's see, it covered the range thing. If they reach for high notes, got that all covered. Okay, so there you go. Match the key if you can. Okay, now it could be that there are 3 references. Could be, Christina, Mariah Carey, somebody else, who's capable of vocal gymnastics. You might find that the 3 reference artists often cut stuff, in the key of C. Not everything is going to be in the same key, although I've got to say, I've put on some records by big hit artists and have noted that probably 80% of the songs on the album are in the same key. Sometimes it could be B, sometimes it could be C. They're going to be close because they've got a top of their range. they've got a starting point, a root note that is going to give them the bottom and the top that they need in their range and be a comfortable place for them to sing. They may like the timbre, the tonality of their voice in that range. So think about the key. Matching the style of the person or act you're pitching to. It's amazing how many submissions we get. I've said this a million times. I would guesstimate that 80% of the time that music is not forwarded by taxi, that the music submitted, sometimes it's really, really good, but it just doesn't match what they're asking for. Could you imagine Imagine Dragons doing a traditional country song? No. Would George Strait cut an electro alt rock song? Highly doubtful. But you'd be shocked by how many people would submit something in the wrong genre, the wrong style, and say, well, why can't they use their imagination and hear my song in the style that they usually work in? Isn't it, a great song is a great song. They should be able to, morph it into their style. That might work a very small percentage of the time, but I'm talking today about increasing your odds. So don't go with the small bet, go with the big bet, the one where you've got a greater chance of having success. Again, it goes back to maybe the greatest song in the world, but you're decreasing your odds of success by making them work to imagine how the song could work for them. Make it easy for them to choose your song by giving them something that falls in the range, stylistically, key-wise, and gender-wise, that are all in the range, in the pocket of what they would normally do, right? It makes perfect sense. So I'm going to take a couple of questions on those items that I've covered so far. Then we're going to listen to today's song, featured song, and do a little feedback on that, and then we're going to resume with more of these items. So any questions from you guys? DG Mace 8888 says, how's the Smooth Jazz original instrumental submissions to Taxi? Looking to see if it's a good market to pitch to. Original smooth jazz instrumentals are often used in the backgrounds of film and TV stuff, restaurant scenes, a swanky nightclub, maybe a hotel lobby or a swanky restaurant scene. Usually simpler is better, and they don't like really outside jazz for that. Smooth jazz is much more likely to get used. Sometimes it's as simple as a just simple jazz instrumental piece. Sometimes it might be a small trio. So yes, there are pitches for that. Let's see. Can acoustic, piano, or guitar stripped down demos work for more different genres? The listings actually tell you if they'll accept stripped down demos. Sometimes they'll accept stripped down guitar vocal or piano vocal masters. Let's go back to the instrumental or demos. Our listings will tell you if they'll take stripped down stuff. Two schools of thought. I've talked about this many times. Some people want it stripped down so they can use their imagination and try and imagine how it would hear fleshed out in the way they hear it. And the minute they put their brain to work on, gee, I could hear this with a great synth part there, or background vocals there, or percussion there, the minute they start to put their brain to work, they're falling in love with it, and it becomes their own, if you will. There are other people that want stuff more fully developed. Let's face it, a lot of the demos being submitted for record stuff these days, because the capability is so extensive with great home studio gear, and you don't need much to produce a fully produced demo these days in a home studio. I would say that the majority, I'm going to guess like 75% or greater of the demos heard in the pro music industry, especially to artists that are higher up on the food chain, big hit artists, they're going to be getting pitched songs by Rock Mafia. Um, I can't think of anybody else at the moment, but they're going to get pitched songs that are going to be fully produced masters by great songwriter, great teams, great songwriting camps. Most of the time, those things are going to be masters, master quality, master production. But there are times some country artists are very happy to hear a stripped down guitar vocal demo. I would say that there are probably some pop R&B artists that may take it that way. Look, if you're Diane Warren, you could probably pitch a piano vocal demo to just about anybody. And it really all comes down to this in the end. A great, great, great song done as a piano vocal demo or a guitar vocal demo is going to shine through as a great song. Then the flip side of that is you could take a song that's a B plus or an A minus that's fully produced. Great. The track has just all the bells and whistles on it and is really, really, really well done. But the song itself is not as great as the A plus stripped down song. I believe that the A plus stripped down song is going to beat the A minus fully produced song. My personal opinion, but I think that that's probably true more often than not. Okay, one more question. Okay, I wonder how many of us are shy about joining Taxi because we can't do fully produced. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Ingrid, because you know what? You'll learn by being part of Taxi, first of all, and being part of the community on the forum, by going to the road rally, by watching these shows, you will learn how to grow into more fully producing your stuff. I think there are a lot of people out there that don't join Taxi because they think that you need a big catalog of a bunch of master quality stuff before you join. Taxi is as much a school and training ground as it is access to the industry. Like I said, there are plenty of examples of stuff where they will take stuff that's stripped down. What about a solo piano smooth jazz piece for the background of a restaurant scene? What about a country act that is looking for just anything that's a great song? Now, admittedly, even if you're going to submit a piano vocal demo or a guitar vocal demo, it still has to be a beautifully crafted song with great song form, amazingly good lyrics, and a good, clean recording of the guitar and the vocal. They don't want to hear, kind of a half-assed sketch. They want to hear something that is a solid representation. So if you can do a great job of recording the piano vocal or guitar vocal song, and the song is super well written, by all means send it. And you know what? You'd be smart to join Taxi and submit for listings and know that, maybe more often than not, that you're not going to get forwarded, but you're going to get feedback every time. So what feels like failure is really moving you one step closer to success. We also have things called custom critiques where you can send a song in the roughest form possible in and say, is this song good enough that you think I should invest more time in making it wonderful and then fully producing a demo of it? We hear that all the time from our members. So don't think that Taxi is like it's black or white or on or off. It's everything in between. And what we're really famous for is growing people into becoming, working at that level where their stuff gets forwarded more often and they do get deals. All those people that I read off before, Paul Otten, Mark Soliasich, Michelle Lockie, Josh Coleman, Ethan Nakamura, Greg Mandel, Paul Coughlin, all these guys, Steve Rice. I think that almost all of them, if not all of them, Brent Magstadt, Graham McCrae, I think that they would tell you that they've all used Taxi to find out kind of where they're at and how to get to where they want to be. They've also used Taxi to take specific songs and fine-tune them to the point where they're ready to be pitched. So they're, like I said, half the benefit of being a Taxi member is the learning and the growth, not just I got a forward, I got a deal, or I didn't. So I hope that answers your question. William Andrews says, I'm hoping Taxi will pressure me to finish unfinished songs. Absolutely. Having deadlines and targets is the greatest anti-procrastination tool I think there is. We hear it from members all the time that they've become so much more prolific and finished so many more things because there was a real opportunity and they had to make a deadline. All right, time for the song of the week, which, as you, most of you who know, watch the show regularly, know that this is the deal. Um, we have you guys submit songs. We pick one every week, and then we play it on the show, and I do a critique. And come on. Wrong one. There we go. Oops, started too soon. Okay, this is called March of the Titans. It's an orchestral trailer piece. We normally don't say the names of the people who submitted the stuff. We also ask that if people are going to chime in with their feedback, be kind, be productive and helpful in the spirit that we do all things at Taxi. Don't slam it. If you got a comment, make it, but make it in a nice, productive way. So this is called March of the Titans, and it is intended to be an orchestral trailer. Let's have a listen and see what we think. All right. That was called March of the Titans. And I could not write fast enough to get down all the thoughts that I had. Okay, generally speaking, trailers are about 2 minutes long, sometimes 2.5 minutes, kind of anywhere in that range. The other important thing to know about trailers is that generally, and almost without exception, they're done in 3 acts within that, let's call it 2.5 minutes. So 3 acts, each of them about equal in length. The first act kind of introduces you to the characters and sets up a little bit of the story. The second act gives you more of the story and develops things more. And then the third act is just, whoops, full on, assuming it's this kind of kind of an action flick trailer as opposed to a love story trailer. Usually by the third act, it's getting very intense and building and getting bigger, and it builds to a massive crescendo, and your heart is pounding, and spaceships are flying by and things are exploding, and it leaves you just absolutely wanting to lean over to your spouse and go, "We got to see that movie." That sounded like Bill Clinton, didn't it? That was a really weak Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton nonetheless. Um, so I would say, first of all, that this gentleman is very much in the ballpark. He's certainly, it sounds like a trailer. Um, Trailer houses, the companies that produce the trailers and reach out for the music, are getting pickier and pickier and pickier about the quality of what they get. It's a fair statement to say that a decent number of trailers nowadays are being done. There are trailer music companies that will actually go to like Prague and use the Prague Symphony, which you can basically rent by the hour or the day, and do a week's worth of recording stuff because the bar has been raised so high that the trailer houses, which are basically ad agencies for the movie industry, that those guys have come to expect a super high quality with real instruments. That said, there are people who are so incredibly masterful at using virtual instrument libraries that it's really, really hard to tell the difference between the real deal or a sample library or virtual instruments. Sometimes people will do almost all of the music using, let's say, the strings from a virtual instrument library, and then maybe overdub, a few real string players on top of that to give it that extra little bit of grit and that little tiny bit of nuance that you get from real players, bowing, where you can actually hear the bow and the rosin on the strings, and they'll add that into the mix. There are other people that will use like cellos from one library, violas from another, violins from yet a third virtual library, maybe even take violins from a fourth virtual library and mix those with the other violins. And this is all an effort to make this stuff sound really human and really real. On a sonic level, even though this was a reasonably decent mix and a pretty good composition, I could hear stuff in that kind of lower mid-range string area that I would say is either low end of violas or high end of cellos. I wasn't sure, but it sounded like a library. It didn't have a lot of expression in it. It didn't sound like real players playing it. So I don't think it's quite at the level that it needs to be to compete yet. Also, because trailers are done in 3 acts, sometimes you'll hear a piece of music that's used top to bottom for all 3 acts. Um, Sometimes those pieces are scored to picture. Sometimes it could be library music where somebody's quite expert at trailer music and they know how to compose a 3 act piece of orchestral music that basically breaks up 2.5 minutes into 3 equal sections. Could be that the first act is just cellos doing something low and suspenseful and creepy. Ooh, what's going to happen next? And then the next section starts adding in some percussion and the rest of the strings. And it's now starting to pick up a little speed, a little bit of intensity. It's getting you more interested in the further details of the story that they're laying out for you in the trailer. Then by the time it gets to Act 3, it's added horns, maybe French horns, trombones, trumpets, on top of the big string section, and it's bringing in taiko drums, maybe timpani, and it's maybe even choral or choir vocals, and it's bringing this all together, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and more intense as it goes. And then there's this huge, huge crescendo at the end. Boom, ends with a big stinger or button ending, and it just leaves you sitting there going, holy crap, I gotta see that movie. This didn't quite get there on the intensity scale at the end. Certainly the composer has a pretty darn good idea. It did grow in intensity, and it did have a crescendo, and it did have an ending. It wasn't quite bombastic enough. I don't think there was quite enough sectional contrast from the first act to the second act to the third act. But I do think it was a pretty darn good effort, and clearly this gentleman is well clued in and well on the way. And I don't think it's going to take him a whole lot of work, just a little more, doing the homework, watching trailers on YouTube to get to the point where he's going to be able to pull off real trailer stuff. For me, um, it was mostly about those lower mid-range string samples just sounding almost like right out of the box. Russell Landwehr saying the dude that did a Taxi TV episode about trailer music said that usually trailers will have parts of different trailer cues to build the whole soundtrack. So why do we need to make the trailer cue in 3 acts? Like I said, sometimes they use 3 different pieces of music. It could start out with, the first act is a love story between a soldier and his wife. Okay, and that's piano, and it's sparse and it's loving and sensitive, and then maybe the last chord of that first act leads you to the second act, which is okay, now he's gone to war, and things start to build with a little more low end, starts to sound more ominous. And then the third act is where he's in this full on battle with Martians and giant spaceships from outer space that are blowing up the world, and it becomes full on. Well, yeah, you could use 3 different pieces and edit them. That's not uncommon by any stretch. But just a personal observation on my part is more and more people are starting to use the same piece all the way through. Just an observation on my part. Yeah, Pedro Costa says it's like they're using 3 different cues to score the trailer. They often do. Stinger is a single hit. A button ending is the end of a song that ends on a hit as opposed to a fade out. Yeah, Stinger, button ending is just like a natural ending. It ends usually on the root note, and boom, it ends on a beat and just rings out naturally, whereas the Stinger, more often than not, seems to have kind of a crescendo to a build and a bigger button ending, if you will. Tune Creator says, I'll do an overdub of a real violin just to humanize. Anytime you can add any real instruments, one of the biggest problems people have is it's a one-man, one-woman studio at home, and they're multi-instrumental, and the end product might tend to sound a little stiff, and not all that human. And it's always a good idea. I mean, as silly as it sounds, overdubbing a cowbell, a tambourine, any sort, a cajon with your hands. And I'm not just talking about orchestral stuff now, obviously. Anytime you can overdub real instruments on top of stuff that's been sampled and midified, that's a good thing. A little slop goes a long way. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So thank you very much to the gentleman who sent that in. I would say you're getting it. You're well on your way. Thank you for submitting. All right. Next thing on my list is read the listing out loud before you pitch to make sure you don't miss things like, and you'll see this in many of our listings, especially those for production music libraries. Do not submit any songs that are already in other catalogs or libraries. When I had lunch with the CEO of that library the other day, again, this was an A-list library owned by a gentleman that I think is super smart, gets tons of placements for our members. I love this guy. He's like, I'd want to be in his library. While I had lunch with him, he said that 50% of the Taxi members that we forwarded to him, and then he reached out. Obviously, he doesn't reach out to everybody, but everybody whose music he liked in the batches of stuff that we send to him, that somewhere around half or 50% of them said, oh yeah, my music's already signed to another publisher. When the listing clearly said, this is an exclusive library, please do not submit any music that is already in any other catalog or signed by any other publisher. And this gentleman actually gets our emails, which, by the way, a lot of the companies that run listings with Taxi are on our email list. They do go look at our forum. I've said this in the past. Don't do anything really dopey in the forum, because you will get spotted eventually, maybe sooner than later, by industry pros who are the people that want to sign you. And if they see you being a troublemaker, for lack of a better word, they're going to think, I don't want to work with this person. Everybody wants everything to be easy. They want it to flow smoothly. So they're not inclined to sign people who are troublemakers. They're also the kind of people that when they, and so he said, look, I read your listings. I see that you guys mention that in virtually every single listing that is for an exclusive library. You guys actually say, please don't submit music that's in any other library or catalog. And yet these people do. And it totally wastes my time. I get excited. I hear a piece of music. I like it. And then I call them up, and then only to find out that the piece of music is already signed to a non-exclusive or another exclusive catalog. I won't put that in my catalog, and they just wasted my time. I wouldn't say they go as far as blacklisting anybody. I don't think there's a master blacklist out there in the industry, but for their own personal world that they live in, if they see your name pop up in another batch of forwards from Taxi, they're going to remember, oh, that's the dopey person that sent me something that was already signed to another library. So you're shooting yourself in the foot, and that's certainly not going to increase your odds of success. So read the listing out loud. I really think that things get absorbed in your brain if you take the time to read it out loud. Andy Gabbers is asking a question here. To be fair, Michael, how much later after the listing deadline were the members contacted? A week, a month, or 6 months? And the reason Andy's asking that question, I'm presuming here, is because it's entirely possible that somebody could have sent the same piece out to 2 listings that were relatively close in succession. And at the time that they sent it out to those 2 or 3 entities, maybe it was unsigned, and maybe one library jumped on the bandwagon before the other library did, or the third library did. You're absolutely right, Andy, in pointing that out, and I'm glad you did point that out, because that could happen. That wasn't the feeling that I got from this gentleman, because it happens so often. If it were something that happened every now and then, I'd say that's probably the reason. Also, I know this guy well, and he's not somebody that waits a very long time to reach out to people. He works ridiculous hours. He's really smart. It's not unusual for me to get an email from him at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, or even on a weekend. So I know this guy works the crazy kind of hours that I do. So I would guess that he's reaching out sooner than later. Okay. I just missed some stuff that scrolled off the page. Anyway, yes, a lot of our members, Gareth Ebb says, I think probably most people are submitting music to parallel listings and to other publishers too. So, yeah, it could happen that way, that you've sent the same piece out. You just finished a piece. You're really excited about it. You see 3 listings that all look like it could work for, and you send it out to all 3. Maybe somebody is really on their game and they get back to you a day later. We've seen that happen. We've seen people get signed before they even got notification from Taxi that they were forwarded. So it could happen that way. By virtue of the fact that this guy said that 50% of the stuff was already signed to other libraries, I doubt it. And there's really no effective way for us. I mean, if you guys were all letting us know, which I know will never happen in my lifetime, but it would be awesome if the member said, hey, I got a deal, when it actually happened. I guess in theory, we could then we'd have to look up every listing and then match every person that was forwarded to every email we got from those people, and then start notifying companies, by the way, this one's off the plate already, that one's off the plate already because it's been signed. In theory, we could do that. Practically, in a practical world, I don't think we could do it. So there you go. All right, and somebody I saw scroll by, somebody said, so what's better, exclusive or non-exclusive? That's a whole other show. We've talked about it in the context of many other shows. Some people like non-exclusive only. Some people like exclusive only because they feel like the company's going to work harder for them. Usually the smaller, no, I don't want to say that. Bottom line is, what works well for one person may not work well for another person. If I personally were making music and submitting it to libraries, I would probably go for a mixture. I would take my easy to do instrumental cues that are probably reality TV oriented, and I don't think I'd be afraid to put those in a bunch of non-exclusive libraries. I've mentioned this on the show many, many times. Our members, Chuck Henry and Stephen Baird, pretty much only put their stuff in non-exclusive libraries, and the same piece in many libraries under many different titles, and they've been very successful doing that. Other people, I know that Matt Hurt over the years has submitted stuff to non-exclusive and exclusive libraries, but he tends to mostly treat the stuff he submits to non-exclusive libraries as if it were exclusive. In other words, he won't take that same piece and put it in 4 other libraries, but he will sign it with a non-exclusive library and then treat it as if it is exclusive. So anybody, it's anybody's guess. What works for one person may not work well for another. I would say probably the safest route to go is do a little bit of each. I would also say that if you're submitting songs that you've put a lot of time and effort into and a lot of hours, I would go for higher end libraries that want stuff exclusively, because they're going to tend to pitch for opportunities like a video montage at the end of a TV show where you're probably going to get a longer play, meaning more money, and the song might be in the clear over no dialogue. Versus reality stuff, if you can bang out 1 or 2 or 3 cues a day, and you can always make more of it if you're using templates, which makes it even easier to bang more stuff out in kind of a factory-like way, put that stuff out there in the non-exclusive libraries. There you go. Hey, Juliet, nice to see you here. Okay. Still riffing on that same thing about reading the listing out loud before you pitch to make sure you don't miss things. 2 years ago, I did a panel under the same title about increasing your odds. And I had Robin Frederick, who used to be the head screener here at Taxi. Very, very smart woman. She is also the author of Shortcuts to Songwriting for Film and TV, which I've said a million times. I'm going to repeat it again. Great to read songwriting books, but this is the only book that talks about the differences in writing songs that will get used in film and TV versus Robin's first book, which has become an industry standard, Shortcuts to Hit Songwriting. This is a great general songwriting book. Frankly, read this one first, and then if you want to submit your songs versus instrumentals to film and TV, read this book. Cannot say enough good things about these books. I am the publisher. I will make a couple bucks when you buy one, so I want that to be known. I'm also a publisher who stands behind what he publishes. So if you get one of these books and you think it sucks, send it back in great condition so we can resell it, and I will personally refund your money. Not too many publishers will do that for you. So Robin Frederick was on this panel. The panel was about same topic as today, increasing your odds. And she said on this panel in 2013, be sure that you read the entire listing. I had somebody just the other day that was submitting on a New Age listing, which is an area that I know well. Yeah, Robin's like a world-class expert in New Age. Her track wasn't forwarded by our A&R person. The member said, but somebody told me I sound like Patrick O'Hearn, who's one of the 3 people mentioned in the listing. The rest of the listing she didn't even refer to. And in fact, the rest of the listing described the type of music, mid-tempo with propulsive drums, ambience and big pads and lots of depth. It really described what they were looking for. And I had no idea what era of Patrick O'Hearn she was listening to, but it certainly didn't sound anything like what the description was in the listing. A lot of time you'll get, and still quoting Robin here, a lot of times you'll get plenty of hints. Everything in the listing should dovetail. You should be seeing a genre, a la artists, in other words, reference artists, and then a short description that just points up the high points of the style or what the listing is looking for. And some of those special emails that you get, those are the ones we send out on a daily basis, that you get with industry listings that are quick turnarounds, those are very descriptive. If it says mellow, acoustic instruments will probably work best for you. Try mellow acoustic instruments, you know? I get emails from people saying, well, it said that it was just suggested. I think one listing said the rock world is definitely preferred here. The member's email said in response, well, you didn't say that you had to send something in the rock world. If you start splitting those hairs so that you can submit something you want to submit, then you're probably in trouble. So she's right. You know, the listing said that the rock world is definitely preferred. Why decrease your odds by sending something outside of rock? Yes, you could, you know, is preferred. Didn't mean you had to send rock. Go with the high probability. And still quoting Robin, so that's why listings have the descriptions that they do, to try to guide you toward the best possible chance of getting your music forwarded, of getting something close to what they're looking for. And to me would be, and that to me would be the best advice I can give. Read carefully and try to submit accordingly. Remember the end user. And then she refers to Kevin, who is Kevin Houlihan, who was our vice president of A&R a couple of years ago. Kevin brought this up a little bit earlier on the same panel when he said that they have a use for this, and the taxi listing many times will describe that use. It's a film TV publisher, it's a music library, it's a music supervisor, it's an ad agency, and here's the use. It's already conceptualized. They've already moved on to the next stage, like the final edit. It's already been approved by the client. Even if you submit a really good song, but it's not what they need, and I've heard these submitted, we can't send that to an ad agency and say, hey, here, change your entire concept of the ad because here's a cool song. We can't do that, unfortunately. So that was a quote from the infinitely wise Miss Robin Frederick. Okay, how are we doing on time? We're making it. All right, ooh, a lot of pages to go. The next one is read all of Taxi's listings, not just the daily updates. You guys, I mean, maybe not you guys watching the show today, but you guys, meaning, you know, everybody on our mailing list in general, we can see how many people open up an email. We can see how many people click on the references. And it's really shocking to me that more people, almost twice as many people, will open up the daily updates versus opening up, as many, if not most, or all of you know, we publish a big new batch of listings. Usually it's about 100 listings in total, and 40 or 50 of them are new on the 1st of the month and on the 15th of the month. And so now you've got 40 or 50 new opportunities, and only half as many people open those as open the daily listings, which has, generally speaking, one new opportunity that's a fairly quick turnaround at the top, followed by 4 or 5 reminders that are culled from the big list that comes out on the 1st and 15th. Well, the problem with only paying attention to those daily emails, especially as it relates to seeing the reminders that sit underneath that first brand new listing, is we send out the reminders about 3 or 4 days in advance of their deadline. So let's say that you've already got a song start, or you've got an orchestral piece that you've got an idea for. Maybe you've laid down, you know, a very early version of it. If you read the listings on the 1st and 15th and saw that listing when it came out, you would probably have 30 days or more to get that piece completed. If you read about it only in the reminder email, which is probably about 3 days before the deadline is due, you're going to have a hard time finishing that big orchestral piece. So you've just decreased your odds of success by not latching onto that opportunity with the longer window to make sure that you get it right. If you had that full 30 days, you could do the piece, you could put it up in the peer-to-peer section of the forum, ask for advice from your other fellow members. You could go back and revisit it all the time. You wouldn't be right up against the deadline. And there's just a greater possibility that you're going to get that piece forwarded and ultimately used. So there you go. The next item is have a pitching plan. If you look at the listings that come out on the 1st, 15th, and take more time to read all of the listings to make sure that you don't miss anything. Now, here's a great example of how you could miss something. It's not your fault, it's not our fault, but it does kind of set you up to miss something, which is, let's say we've got a listing for an orchestral piece. Do we put that under the orchestral heading? Do we put it under the instrumental genre heading? Or do we put it under the film and TV music heading? Frankly, we do our best to figure that out. The one thing we don't do is put it under instrumental, orchestral, and film and TV. If we've tried that in the past, and excuse me, we got complaints from members. Even though we were trying to make it as visible as it could be in as many places that people could find it, what the feedback that we got from the members was, oh, you guys are padding listings, trying to make it look like you've got more than you do, because I found the same listing in 3 places. I could certainly understand why people think that. We were doing it for good reasons, not for any nefarious reasons, but perception is everything, and the perception from a lot of people was that we were trying to pad the listings. I see that with competitors, or so-called competitors of taxis, that yeah, I can't give too much away because you'll know who I'm talking about, but people who put the same listing, you know, in 3 different places because they're trying to beef up their listings and make it look like they've got more than they actually do. And frankly, I think that maybe they are doing it for nefarious reasons other than the one I just mentioned. I think that they're hoping people are actually dopey enough to submit the same piece to, you know, the listing that appears in instrumental. Maybe the same piece will get submitted a week later in film and TV music. Maybe the same piece will get submitted later for orchestral. People that don't track, you know, their submissions, don't keep a spreadsheet of them, they could easily make that mistake. And these companies live or die by the submission fee, so they're hoping that you make that mistake. So anyway, we try to do our level best to make sure that the right listings are going in the right categories, but sometimes it's virtually impossible to make the right decision. Russell Landwehr says, they are competitors, but they are not competition. Thanks, Russell. Yeah, I just want to, I don't want to go into negative, you know, negative land on that stuff, but yeah. I see stuff that blows my mind. Anyway, please, guys, I am imploring you, I'm begging of you, please read the listings that come out on the 1st and 15th. It really doesn't take that long. And frankly, print them out and take a highlighter and highlight the ones that you think are a good pitch for you. Then go back after you've highlighted them and read them really carefully. Read them out loud. Also, budget how much you're going to spend on submissions per week or per month, and then stick to that budget. It really breaks my heart when I see new members especially that get what we call new memberitis. They're so overwhelmed by all these great opportunities they see in the taxi listings that their mind runs away with itself. They like, oh, yeah, I should submit for that because they're you know, it says references the group The Pretenders, and somebody once told me that my vocal sounds like Chrissie Hynde. They don't read the whole rest of the listing and they blow it. Okay, yeah, maybe that one song that you did 3 years ago maybe did sound like one thing that Chrissie Hynde sang, but the rest of your song doesn't really fit that listing. So if you budget yourself and you know that you're only going to spend, let's say, $20 a month in submissions, 4 submissions, then you're going to have to do a little more research and think a little bit harder about how you're going to spend that money. And again, we don't make money on the submission fees. It goes to pay the screeners, and it's usually we make a little profit, we make a little loss, or it's about a break even. It's generally a wash, money in, money out. The other companies are living or dying by the submission fees, so they want you to make those mistakes. At least I believe they want you to make those mistakes. We don't want you to. We want you to make high probability choices in what you submit so that you have a better chance of getting forwarded and a better chance of something happening with your music. We would much rather have a successful, happy member that's going to tell other people how much they love Taxi than a pissed off member that never gets forwarded because they're pitching poorly. Okay, swig of water, and then we're moving on to the next section. This is a tough one. Be honest with yourself. Do you really think that somebody looking for a great jazz tune is going to get excited over a track that has obviously been made with a drum machine? Do you really think that somebody that's looking for a country song is going to get excited about your folk song and think, well, I really need a country song for this, but I really like this folk song so much that I'm going to use it instead? You are lying to yourself. You're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and you are rationalizing it. You're lying to yourself just so that you can justify that submission. You're only going to be disappointed in the end. Like Robin Frederick said, they've already got the use figured out. They know what they need. The odds, and again, we're back to, changing the odds in your favor, but the odds of somebody actually using a piece of music that is off target for what they need, can't say that it never happens, but I can say that it rarely happens. If you're going to the track, are you going to bet on a horse that's had a few wins in the past, or put down a bet on a horse that's never won a race in its life? Unless you were in the stable injecting the horses with some kind of drugs beforehand, you would go with the horses that at least have won some races in the past, right? So don't bet on a horse that's not going to win or has no chance. Don't fool yourself into thinking that even though your song is a depressing breakup song, that it's so good that an ad agency is going to use it for a TV commercial that asks for emotionally uplifting music. Ain't going to happen. Ask a friend or a family member to read the listing out loud and then listen to what you're planning to pitch. Even though they may not be that musically inclined, you're still going to get some sort of objective opinion other than your own, which is highly subjective and probably clouded by, for lack of a better word, horniness to pitch to something. Get some sort of outside feedback. Use the peer-to-peer section of the Taxi forum. Maybe one of the greatest things that we offer. Throw the full listing up there, not just a listing number, but throw the full text of the listing up there, and then put a link to your song so that your fellow members, who are unbelievably generous and pretty darn smart, can check out the listing and see if you're going to make a good pitch or a bad pitch, and then see what the consensus is. Not just one person. And I've noticed that usually the first 2 people are a little overly kind, maybe the first 2 or 3 people to comment. Usually people further down the thread are being more realistic. Look at it in its totality. And if 70 or 80% of the people are telling you, it's a pretty darn good song, they may be even saying it's a great song or a great track. But if the majority of them are saying, I don't think it's a good shot for that listing, save the $5. We don't want your money that badly. Okay. Here's another great one that I don't think enough people do. As a matter of fact, I know not enough people do this because we can see how many people click on the links to the references. Listen to the references. We spend a ton of time here trying to get the best possible references for you guys. Sometimes it's really hard. We'll spend maybe an hour or 2 sifting through a whole bunch of music trying to find 3 references that are all getting you pretty darn close to the target. And yet we see very few people clicking on the references. You are only shooting yourself in the foot and decreasing your odds of success by not looking for what are the common things that tie these three references together. And then go back and read the listing again after you've heard the references and find out what it is that is specifically mentioned in the listing that relates to those three references. Now you should have a really good idea of what they're asking for and just give it to them if you've got it. And if you don't, then don't pitch it. Sometimes people think, you know what, $5, not a big deal. I'm going to take a shot. We've had cases where people took a shot on something they thought wasn't a great pitch. They thought it was an outside, like an outside pitch, and it made it through. It does happen, but it's not a high probability bet. Rebecca Ann Curtis is saying, sometimes the link aren't hyperlinks in the emails and I have to copy and paste them. There are all these different browsers out there, all these different email formats. And yeah, we check the listings here to make sure everything is kosher before they go out. I get emails where I have to copy and paste links. So what? Copy and paste it. A lot of the regular listings that come out in the batches on the 1st and 15th, we don't want a gazillion links on that web page. So we tend to not put links in those things. But you know what? It'll mention the artist. Copy the artist's name, throw it in Google, listen to 2 or 3 of their songs, copy the next artist reference name and paste that in Google. Spend a little time. It's incumbent on you to know your market and what the market is asking for. We do most of the work for you. If it requires one more step on your part, is that too much to ask? I don't think so. We can only hand it to you on a platter so much. At some point you've got to take some of the responsibility. Next item is know the industry that you want to be part of. And here's another great quote from Robin Frederick. The charts are what you study to see what your business is doing. I'm going to repeat that. The charts are what you study to know what your business, which is the music business, is doing. You wouldn't be an architect if you didn't know how to design or build a house. True enough. So if you're pitching mostly reality TV cues, then watch a lot of reality TV and know what they use. You're going to learn so much. If you just watched 1 hour of reality TV a week, and it doesn't even have to be the same show all the way through. Could be that you watch, 20 minutes of one show, 20 minutes of another, 20 minutes of another. There's your hour for the week. You're going to learn so much, and write down what you learn on a legal pad. And the next time you're sitting down to compose, look at those notes. It's staring you in the face. So what kind of notes should you take? What are the most common if you're pitching songs to be used in video montages in dramas, watch the shows that use those types of songs and take notes about them. What are the most common lyric themes? Because you'll find the vast majority of them are about love, falling in love, falling out of love. I've been hurt by love. I feel great because I'm falling in love. Other common themes are introspective, what's my life all about? What's it all about, Alfie? Very good. There's a range of themes, and with very few exceptions, they're going to fall. The songs that are used most frequently are going to fall into those themes because they support common emotions. And that's what songs do in video montages, is they fill in for the lack of dialogue because they do a better job of putting a bow on and expressing that emotion. They can make you cry where a line of dialogue might not, but a song that conveys that emotion can really amplify what the emotion is that they want you to feel. What are the most common genres? What are the most common song structures? Are they mostly stripped-down singer-songwriter songs, or are they full bands? Well, it depends. If it's an emotional, if the video montage is about lost love, broken hearts. It could very well be a piano vocal thing. It could very well be a guitar vocal thing. It might be a 3 or 4 piece band that's playing something light and sensitive about, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What am I going to do now that she's left me? But again, I've said this on a million shows. It's got to be a universal lyric. What do I do now that she's gone is definitely more universal than how can I live without Franny? Okay, nobody's going to use a song, How Do I Live Without Franny? But they are going to use a song, What Do I Do Now That She's Gone? Because 50% of the time, it's going to be a girl who the protagonist in the show is pining after or longing about. Let's see. When are they going to use full bands? Probably more often than not in party scenes or chase scenes, or maybe a scene that's a danger scene, things that are, you're not going to use a guitar vocal demo in a scene that's about where somebody's going to get their head chopped off if they walk around the wrong corner, right? So just make notes about things like that. And moving on, wow, I think I might be able to get through this in the prescribed amount of time. Don't waste your money on fake opportunities. Don't waste your time or money on fake opportunities. When you see a listing that says, and I'm not talking about a taxi listing, I'm talking about a listing on some of those other sites. When you see a listing that says that a music supervisor has worked as the road manager for this act and that act and has no history, they're not going to say he's got no history, but if they will actually post the names of the person running the listing, and you Google that person, or they may even have a bio for that person. I saw a listing the other day, several listings for different kinds of music from the same person. This person has never done anything that would qualify him as a music supervisor. The guy worked on the road with a bunch of acts, so that makes him a road manager or a roadie or something, but not a music supervisor. There's your first sign. You may want to avoid that listing. When it says they're looking for songs to put in regular, and this is an actual quote, regular rotation on this major TV network. Regular rotation? That's a radio term. Songs that get good feedback when they test it on a radio station, a new release from an artist on Atlantic Records. And they play that, they'll spin it on like a new music show. Maybe they'll play it late at night. Maybe they'll test it out during drive time if it tests well during another part of the day. And they make a decision. Yes, this is making our listeners happy. It's keeping them engaged and on our station for a longer period of time. Then they're going to put that song in what they call regular rotation. Regular rotation is not a term that's used in the music for film and TV world. A network doesn't hear a song and go, oh, this is an awesome song. Let's put it in regular rotation. Let's use it in, several of the shows on our network. Ain't going to happen. They would actually like the opposite. They don't want the same piece of music showing up in a bunch of different shows. So any listing that says that a music supervisor, who's not actually a music supervisor, is looking for songs in any genre, any tempo, about any lyric theme, and it's going to be put in regular rotation, I'm calling bullshit on that. Pardon my French. But, it's just a made-up listing. Know that when you see a listing that says virtually any genre could work, and they don't even mention a lyric theme, that is probably a fake listing. If the listing says, and this was all part of the same listing, which I can't directly quote on the show because I don't want to infringe anybody's copyright, but within that same listing, it said they're going to pay up to $5,000 per use in sync fees for a TV placement. That's an extremely high and very unlikely number for an unknown artist or composer. I can't say never that, it's possible somebody could get a $5,000 sync fee. Knowing what I know, it's extremely unlikely. Yeah, if you're a baby band that's on a happening indie label and you're touring the country and you're starting to get a lot of love online and you're starting to get a little radio play, could you get $5,000 for a placement? Yes. Most of you watching the show who aren't well known, who don't have a label behind you, who aren't out there touring, and don't have a long history of building a fan base, etc., it's extremely unlikely that you're going to get $5,000 for a placement. So, in a listing that says, regular rotation, a music supervisor who has no music supervision credits, and a $5,000 sync fee, I say that that listing is a waste of your time and money, and that is really, really skewing the odds against you of having any success. If I saw one of those listings and I were in your shoes, I would run for the hills. Um, as I said at the beginning of the show, the music business is much less of a lottery than people might think, and success usually comes to people who work hard and learn everything they can about the industry that they want to be successful in. Remember that list I read off at the beginning of the show of all those placements, and we heard the name Paul Otten in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those listings. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 different shows or commercials. And Paul Otten had his stuff in 6. Paul Otten lives and breathes this stuff. Is he naturally talented? Yes. Is he way better now than he was 2 or 3 years ago? Absolutely. Has he done a tremendous amount of research to figure out what has the highest probability of succeeding in several or many different genres? Absolutely. The reason Paul Otten is so successful is because he has done his homework, he's got a great work ethic, and he spends a lot of time getting stuff right. So there you go. We've got time to squeeze in some questions. So there you go, guys. Please hit me with some questions before we wrap this show up. Mary Van says, I don't think I'd ever use any A&R but Taxi. Thank you for that. Terry Lemons is Paul Otten, Otten. Mary Ban says they looked at listings of some of those other sites and they were just too vague, etc. Exactly what Michael's been saying. Gloria Covington says, way to go, Paul. Everybody's saying Paul is awesome. Yes, he is. Paul and Helen Austin. Paul Otten and Helen Austin were actually introduced by me at the Road Rally, I think in, I want to say 2012, I believe. They were on a panel together. I had a small gathering in my suite one night where I brought together several Taxi members that I thought would be good co-writes with each other and had them each do like a little mini concert up in my room. And Paul and Helen were there and they met, and they are now a band called Big Little Lions. They've got a CD out and those guys are kicking butt. Michael, are all the music libraries you guys represent pre-screened by Taxi? Absolutely. We check for things like how long have they been in business, who's the person that helms the company, because sometimes it could be a brand new company with somebody that's jumped ship from a bigger company and started their own catalog. We've had a few cases where Taxi members have become extremely adept and know the film and TV side of the industry really, really well. And all of a sudden, music supervisors that they've met through Taxi are reaching out to them directly and asking them for stuff that they can't do. So they've started small libraries and are pitching their stuff. We'll work with them because we know them personally and we know them to be ethical and that their connections are real. We check out these companies that we work with to see how long they've been in business, how many placements they've had, what level of placements. There are some companies that are non-exclusive and almost all their placements are reality TV based. We will actually tell you that in the listing. If we say that a library is an A-list library, it means that they're getting really good placements in big TV shows, some feature films, maybe the occasional trailer, the occasional commercial. That's an A-list library. But yes, we check them all out. Have we had some that have slipped through the cracks and fooled us? Yes, I think we've had two or three in 23 years. So you can pretty much rest assured that if you're submitting to a taxi listing, that we've checked the company out. Have we had complaints on a few people? Very few. People have signed with the library and then they complain, this person never responds to my emails or my phone calls. Yep. More often than not, that's because it's a small company. Well, most of them are small companies, and they need to be pitching every waking minute of the day to get their stuff in. If they've got 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 composers, even a small library with just 200 composers or artists in their catalog, if they got just one email a month from each of those composers, that's 200 emails a month. That's roughly, what, 7 a day, 6 or 7 a day. If they answer, I know from my experience when I answer emails that I get from taxi members, it's never just, okay, great, thanks, Michael. It's one question answered leads to another question, which leads to another question, which leads to a dialogue. And before the end of the week, I've probably had to answer 7 or 8 or 9 emails from that one member. So the libraries are scared to death of reaching out, spending a lot of time answering emails and phone calls. So that's why they're not that great at it. I'm trying to find the next question. All right. Great show, Michael. Wish I had joined Taxi long before I did. Taxi's helped me become a better composer slash arranger. You guys rock. Thanks, Gregory. I appreciate that. You know, like I said in the beginning of the show, it's half education, half access. And we try to help people get good enough that they get the access. Stephen Carey says, great description on emails, Michael. Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, Michael, when in Road Rally? I think Terry means when is the next Road Rally? It is November 5th through the 8th in Los Angeles. We'll be at the same hotel right next to LAX. You will not need a rental car. You can take a free shuttle from the airport to the hotel, and basically, other than maybe going out to grab some lunch or dinner, you're not going to want to leave the hotel. Bubble says, you are our mentor, Michael. Thank you. I try. I really do. I love helping you guys because it feels amazing to all of us who work here when we see you guys become successful because of what we do. Russell says, there are a lot less instrumental listings than the regular listings. There are more in dispatch now. Did something change in the industry? Not really. What we found was the people who sign up for Taxi Dispatch, which we generally don't recommend that first-year members do. Taxi Dispatch started out, probably 10 years ago or more, when the majority of our listings were record company and publishers as they relate to record companies in the record and radio industry. And then we started getting more and more listings from libraries and film and TV people. All of a sudden, we started getting listings where people needed music in a day or 2 or 3. So we created Taxi Dispatch, which costs you, I think, 43 cents a day. We prorate it, so if you're in your last 3 months of your membership, you only pay for 3 more months at 43 cents a day of dispatch. It's an upgrade. It's like ordering leather trim seats for your car or some other option, upgrade for your car or upgrading a hotel room or buying a first class seat on an airline. Those listings were targeted at people who were probably more advanced taxi members who had been around long enough to know more about the industry and could turn stuff around more quickly. So we rolled out Taxi Dispatch. And then over time, especially in the last 3 years, so many listings we get are quick turnaround stuff. And we noticed that the Taxi Dispatch members, of which there are roughly, I think, 600 or 700, that the people who were what they were submitting mostly to were library listings because that's mostly what they did. So we tend to put a lot of the instrumental library listings versus library listings asking for songs with lyrics. We put those in Dispatch because we know that most of the people in Dispatch, that's what they do, and we give them what they want. So unless you're doing primarily instrumental stuff, unless you're able to turn stuff around pretty quickly, I wouldn't join Dispatch if you're a new member. But if you're a member that's been around, you know the drill, and you do instrumental stuff, and you like pitching at libraries, and you can do it pretty quickly, Dispatch may be something you should check out. And you can call any member of my staff. We've got a Dispatch calculator that will tell them what it's going to cost you. I recommend that you try Dispatch like the last quarter of your first year if that's the kind of music you do. And yes, it's a lot of instrumental stuff ends up there, but there's still, again, plenty of instrumental listings, actually quite a few of them between the daily specials that we put out. I mean, dear God, could we run any more library listings looking for instrumental hip hop stuff? Happens all the time. I think that there are a lot of instrumental listings, like I said in the beginning of the show, that are either under the genre of music. It could be under hip hop, it could be under instrumental, or it could be under film and TV. And this is why I think it's so critical that you guys take 15 minutes and go through the whole batch of listings on the 1st and 15th. They're out there, you're just not seeing them. Fuller Music wants to know, is it normal for an exclusive deal to be for life, or as they often say, perpetuity, or more likely for a few years? It's both. I understand why people want to do stuff in perpetuity. It's because they distribute the music on hard drives out to maybe 200 post-production facilities, let's say. Could be networks, could be editors, could be a post facility. And now if the term of that exclusive deal ends in 3 years, then they've got to pull that stuff off the drives. And they would be emailing all these people every day to pull this stuff off the drives, which they're not going to do. Some libraries have a deal that says in 3 years you're out of the deal. However, if they've already distributed the music to those entities and the deal happens 3 years and 5 days after you sign the contract, that even though you're still free to take that music and take it elsewhere, they still participate in the original terms of the deal because they signed you 3 years ago. And that seems like a pretty reasonable way to deal with it. I know that some of the libraries that have like a 3-year term, if they don't get you a placement within a 3-year window, that the copyright and the master revert back to you. But I think in some of those cases, again, if it's already out on the drive and distributed to end users and a placement happens as a result of a connection they made for you, they're probably still going to participate in the deal. Okay, I think the questions are done. All right. Thank you all for watching this episode. Sorry I had to speak so quickly, but I had a lot of ground to cover. I hope that you guys learned a lot from it. And once again, I want to say congratulations to Paul Otten, Mark Soljicic, Michelle Lockie, Paul Coughlin, Josh Coleman, Ethan Akamura, Greg Mandel, Dean Taylor, Matt Hurt, Owen Chaim, Steve Rice, and Brent Magstadt and Graham McCrae. All those people had deals recently, placements. Some of them, a lot of them are actually really, really good placements, all through just one library. And you got to imagine, gosh, if this was just like off the top of this guy's head, recent placements, and not all of them that were recent placements, just imagine how much music from Taxi members is out there on a daily basis. I could not be more proud of you guys, and I hope that we can continue to get you many, many, many more deals. Next week's show, I already have a topic figured out. Next week's show is going to be called How Long Does It Take? because it's amazing how many people get frustrated. They get forwarded to several places. They don't get a deal right away, and they figure, you know what, none of these idiots are ever going to call me back. I'm not going to get a deal. And now 2.5 years later, after their membership runs out, they find out not only did they get a deal, but they got a placement. And then I look at that and go, gee, I wonder how many more placements they would have had if they had remained members and kept feeding the pipeline. So I'm going to do an entire show that is going to be dedicated to how long it takes, to give you an idea of the range of how long it takes and the reasons why it takes so long in some cases, in other cases, overnight. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching this exciting episode of Taxi TV, and we will see you guys next Monday at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye. Woo!